Okay.
So we know at heart you're a wrestling fan. What match tonight exceeded your expectations, and what match maybe didn't live up to your expectations?
I thought everything was tremendous. My expectations were very high, and the card was top to bottom excellent. I've had multiple people text me this was their favorite pay-per-view. So I think everything has to hit expectations and then some. And coming off All Out, I think the expectations from everyone, inside and fans of the company as well, would be very high, and I think we lived up to the expectations and then some. I thought everything was great.
How about individual matches?
Oh man, from the beginning of the show, it was great. I mean, MJF and Darby started it out great, and Hangman and Kenny closed it out great. Everything in between was tremendous. And they were all such different kinds of cool matches. So everything from start to finish was tremendous. You don't see anything really like the prize fight that CM Punk and Eddie Kingston had. The street fight, the Falls Count Anywhere match were excellent. I thought Britt Baker and Ty Conti was tremendous. Maybe Britt's best defense of the title yet. I think 100% the best match Ty Conti's had I've ever seen anywhere in pro wrestling. And really start to finish, I thought everything on the show was excellent. All the matches, the tag match, I loved Cody and Pac versus Andrade Malachi. I loved FTR versus the Lucha Brothers. And really the whole show, top to bottom, was excellent. Bryan Danielson and Miro was excellent. I think it was one of the best matches of Miro's career and in Bryan Danielson's excellent career. Another great pay-per-view match, and sets up a huge match between Hangman and Bryan Danielson. It wasn't a wrestling match, but I thought it was a very cool surprise for Jay Lethal to come on the scene and get the reaction he did and challenge Sammy for the TNT title, which is a huge match on Wednesday. I think people are really excited to see. So top to bottom, the show was excellent. I thought all the wrestling delivered, and I was very, very happy with it. Thank you.
Tony, congratulations on such a huge night.
Thanks.
Great show. So as Full Gear approached, we saw the attention put onto guys like CM Punk and Eddie Kingston, who have traveled the world and who had a great match tonight. So why and how do you think AEW has become a place to give those guys a platform to have a great match and also to tell a story that fans are emotionally invested in?
I think it's been that from day one. I mean, from our first show, Double or Nothing in 2019, it's been a platform for wrestlers to come in and have great wrestling matches. Cody versus Dustin, and Young Bucks versus Lucha Brothers, and Kenny Omega versus Chris Jericho. Our first show, there was really great wrestling across the card, and I think we've had that on all of our pay-per-view shows, and tonight was another great one. So we've been a platform for wrestlers to come in and have great wrestling matches from the beginning. Eddie Kingston came into the company last year and has had a lot of great matches, and CM Punk has only been in the company a few months and has already had several great wrestling matches. And tonight was a fight, like we said on commentary. He's out-wrestled his opponents. He's had a bunch of great wrestling matches against a variety of opponents, including Darby Allin and Bobby Fish, Daniel Garcia, a number of other great wrestling matches, but definitely this was the first real bloody fight he's been in, and it was a great fight. And both of them have, I believe, found a great home here in AEW. And a lot of people have found a great home here, and even Jay Lethal, who just has gotten here tonight, is already feeling at home. So.
Thank you.
Tony, it's quite a juxtaposition. The last time we got to talk to you, it was all about bringing in people from another company and making them big-time stars. Whereas tonight, you're building a homegrown star. You have that culmination.
Sure.
How do you manage as a booker going from one extreme to the other like that? How fulfilling of a culmination was it for you to see your guy?
I do think it was a mix of things, because our last pay-per-view, I still think a lot of it was about the homegrown stars in that moment, and at the end of the show was a mix of homegrown stars and new stars coming in, because even though at the end of the show, you had Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks out there with Adam Cole, who is an established star in pro wrestling. He has a long history with them, it made sense, but really that segment elevated Jungle Boy, and again we saw the elevation of Jungle Boy that's been happening in recent months, going back to Double or Nothing. But even tonight, on the flip side, tonight also was about stars coming in, a new month with Jay Lethal arriving on the scene, and I think a star from another company that had just arrived tonight. And also, so I think it's a mix of things, and if that last show was maybe more one thing than the other, but still a balance, I think maybe there was more of seeing those wrestlers and less focus on new people in some ways, but then probably when you didn't think there were going to be any new people coming in tonight, Jay Lethal came in right before the main event, challenged Sammy coming off of the great street fight, and I thought that Dan Lambert and of course the UFC fighters were tremendous. Andrei Arlovsky and Junior Dos Santos really, I think, took a lot of people by surprise with his athleticism and that moonsault he did. I think I like to do both, and sometimes you do more one than the other, so it's a mix of the things. That's a great question.
Tony, Hangman Page was the first person to come out at that first press conference and say, I want to be AEW champion. And a lot of people thought maybe he would be. Was there ever any consideration given to that? Who did you, in your mind, when you launched AEW, were you like first AEW champion?
Well, Chris Jericho, and then Jon Moxley and Kenny Omega.
So it never deviated.
No, and honestly, if you look back, they all set up. I mean, Chris wrestled Kenny, and then it built to Kenny coming back to wrestle later for the title, teaming with Hangman. Hangman also wrestled Chris. He got to those, and then it built to Chris and John, and that's where John won the title. And while that was happening, Kenny and Hangman had their partnership, their story, and John made all those great defenses through the pandemic and was such a great pandemic champion. And then last winter, we did Kenny versus Hangman at this event last year, which was a very different thing. It wasn't in this great arena with over 10,000 fans packed in this awesome arena. We were in a great venue in Daly's Place, and it felt like a big pay-per-view. I don't know if anybody was in Jacksonville for Full Gear last year, but that was a great show too. And yeah, there were only 1,300 people socially distanced. But when the Young Bucks won the World Tag title, when Darby won the TNT title, they were real pops, and the fans in Jacksonville helped us get to this point where this meant something tonight. And last year, Kenny and Hangman had that great match in the Eliminator final, and then we came full circle to this, and I think it all made sense. Kenny won the title and had an amazing reign. He was very close to 1 year as champion, and there was a question, is Kenny going to make it to 1 year as champion, or is Hangman going to be crowned tonight? And the people clearly wanted to see Hangman be crowned, but when Bryan Danielson won the Eliminator tournament, you had to ask yourself, are Kenny and Bryan Danielson going to wrestle again? I know everybody was thinking in the back of their head, there has to be a chance.
So you're setting up these pieces consciously, obviously, right?
Yeah, and even when Bryan Danielson won, I knew it was going to make you all think. Wait a second. And it clearly did from the reaction of getting in the room. Nobody's saying it didn't. So, okay, that's good. That makes me feel better. Then these things are all pretty well thought out in advance. So yeah, the first four, I would have told you along would be Chris Jericho, Jon Moxley, Kenny Omega, and Hangman Page a few years ago.
This is directly related, but do you have a fifth and a sixth?
I don't want to say that. Well, and a lot of things have changed since then, but I mean, these guys have been here from the very beginning, from the first show. These are four people that have been in the mix for that title in AEW, and arguably the four top people in the company in that time. So it's, now there are new faces, but we'll see what's happening. I do think right now the important thing is to focus on. It's been a long time for Hangman to chase his title, and I think there's no rest for the weary. Like he said, he should enjoy it tonight, but then he's got the biggest test you could put in front of any pro wrestler in Bryan Danielson coming up. So, and we know Bryan Danielson loves to wrestle, so I'm really looking forward to that.
Cody got booed again tonight, and he's sort of the only performer that fans don't react the way it's drawn up. Have you thought about simplifying things, back to basics? What do you think the solution is?
Well, people are definitely reacting in his matches, and I don't think, the most important thing is people are very engaged, and I don't think it's stopped him from having great matches that people care about. His matches and segments have done great ratings, so it is another one of those things like I spoke about earlier. A lot of conventions I think have changed recently. People had asked me about some of the matches which are not traditional, like CM Punk versus Eddie Kingston, two people who fans really like, right? Two baby faces, you could say. Bryan Danielson and Eddie Kingston, similar, great fight, arguably one of the best matches of the year. I think a number of intelligent wrestling people think that was the best wrestling match of the year. Certainly the best wrestling match on television, I think a lot of people have thought. But that's very debatable too. There's been a lot of great stuff on TV this year, and a lot of people who would take a argument with that, but it's one of the best matches, and certainly in Rampage, one of the best matches in the short history of that show. And then CM Punk and Darby Allin is a great match. Bryan Danielson had a great match with Dustin Rhodes. So there's all kinds of different reactions and ways to get people into a wrestling match. But one thing that I think is telling is his segments have done good ratings, and people still take him very seriously in the mix. It's not like when he's in there in a big match, people think he shouldn't be in them with the quality. So he's still a very big star. I don't see it like that, and I also think, to be honest, some of it comes from who's out there, because in that situation, like, he's out there with people that get big reactions and are cool heels. So there's a consciousness to me that, like, a lot of times there's a lot of Malachi Black fans, there's a lot of Andrade El Idolo fans, so it's not that unusual to me. And you see it, and I think there were other matches, not just tonight, but other times where we've seen the fans make an interesting choice or not sure how the fans were going to side in a match. But no, I think, the way we're doing is pretty good.
Did the mixed reaction that he gets factor into how you mapped out the finish to that tag match?
No, not really. I mean, I take into account the reactions and stuff, but I think that, again, people have a good reaction to him, and at the end of the match, I think there's still an interesting thing happening, because clearly Andrade and Malachi, and particularly FTR, are still pretty aggrieved with the Death Triangle and Cody. So I think there's still interesting things out there. Dax got rocked in the match, so Cash switched masks with him because he didn't think Dax was going to be able to keep going in the match. So Cash put his mask on, and then Cash ended up being the one to get pinned. He's pretty upset because Cash, has in his mind a legitimate beef because he was the illegal man, but of course he also tried to pull the switcheroo. So it's kind of a what's good for the goose is good for the gander. But those guys are upset, they said to me, and so I think we've got like a good setup for more interesting stuff. And really, I just thought it was a great match, and I think the fans, enjoyed it. But I think you have to look at who the opponents are sometimes too.
Tony, Rampage has had some great moments in matches, but that Friday 10 p.m. Eastern time slot is sometimes tough to get people to tune into.
Well, isn't it, Nick, a bit of an objective criteria? I mean, it's the numbers we do are still one of the top shows for the night. So I think sometimes people think that the number you do for Dynamite should be the exact number you do for Rampage, but it's really an apples to oranges comparison.
I'm not trying to diminish what Rampage is doing at that time slot. I'm just asking, would you like to or have plans to move that show to a different time slot where you could see more people getting access to the content?
Well, it's frequently the number one show in its time slot, and it's beating pretty much everything we faced head to head, and very often, it's been one of the tops. It's been number one show a number of times, even out of that time slot on all of Friday TV, and frequently it's in the top 5, top 3, 4, 5. So it's a great, and what we do out of that slot is very impressive. So they're really happy with the show. So the fans, they see if it doesn't do as big a number as Dynamite, to them it's not good. But the fact is, for the time slot it's in, it's performed really well, and they're really happy with it. So I'm thrilled with it because it's a great franchise for us. If it were ever to change and be, in a different slot, I would do the best I could in that spot too, and whatever the standard is. If it was a spot where the average was higher, then we would have to do a higher average. But in the spot we're in, we do really, really well. So it's funny, but the weeks that the Fast Nationals don't leak, it's always a pretty good number. And if the Fast Nationals leak, I wonder why, and I wonder who leaks them. But
Do you wonder?
No, I really don't wonder. No, I don't. That's subjective on their part. I think we all know what's happening. I don't think it's particularly, to their benefit. But I think it's done really well. And if you ask the network in the slot how they feel about it, it's really good. But I get that Dynamite is in many ways a more attractive time slot, but also that's why I've put so many awesome matches that would make Rampage a destination for the hardcore wrestling viewer, no matter where they go, even if they have to turn it on in somebody else's house or in a bar or on their phone. You don't want to miss Bryan Danielson versus Eddie Kingston. You don't want to miss Andrade versus Pac 2. These are really special matches. And even trying to put something in cool last night that was like a throwback to an old cruiserweight match with Dante and Arya, where again it's two baby faces, but they're both from here, and the crowd was never going to not care about what both of them were doing. And if they're going to go high spot, high spot, high spot, my psychology was like, okay, well at least they care about both guys. Go bam, bam, bam. It's 6 minutes, and they did great. So there's all different kinds of shapes and reactions, and the psychology of matches is different, and that's one of the things that I think makes it great. But so I definitely think it's cool, having wrestling on a Friday night, even if that's not the easiest time to draw viewers. There's something to it. A lot of us grew up on that, and it's a great block. And if you're a wrestling fan who wants to watch everything, there's a lot of great wrestling on Friday night sometimes. So
sure. So no plans to change the time?
No. I think I really I think it's our time. And we're going forward. Obviously, everybody knows Dynamite next year is going to move to TBS after January, but Rampage is staying on TNT, and as far as I know, that's a slot. Plus, Battle of the Belts coming in January too. So even though Dynamite's moving to TBS, we'll actually have another show coming to TNT. So it's exciting.
Can I follow up on that? One of the things, we only get the Fast Nationals, but you're also on the TNT app. You're on demand, and there's the Day Plus 7. And we never hear about that. How does AEW do in those?
Well, it's interesting because like I don't leak that stuff as much, and then after it comes out, like the sevens take 7 days, so they're not really the story anymore. But like, you know, there have, for example, when we went head to head, like a lot got made when we did the Friday where we were doing our show, and then all of a sudden I found out there was a 30-minute window where we have competition head to head, and we won the 30 minutes head to head in the demo. And I found out that like for the entire night with the plus sevens we won. Now the 8 to our 10 to 11 beat the entire 8 to 10:30. So not only did we win the head to head straight up and with significantly with the DVR, but also with, you know, the L plus sevens, we actually won the whole night, which is interesting. But you know, I at the end of the day, we have to do good wrestling shows, and I think for better or for worse, like in wrestling, the wrestlers win and lose, but the companies live and die by these business metrics, and fans are judged to really care about. Fans are taught to judge them and really care about them, and I think it does matter. It's mattered since I was young, and the ratings have never been more important in many ways. But the most important thing for the fans, I think, is to know that we're doing really, really, really well. And you know, to have 2 shows that are consistently around the top 5, top 10, and that have both finished at #1 multiple times, that is a really cool thing to do. And the TV industry has changed a lot just since we started. Like, a lot of people don't know this. You know, the wrestling business has done very well over the last 2 years when you consider that there was a 9% decline over the last year in cable and satellite subscribers, and there was a 9% decline the year before that. So you're down 18% from when we started. So bear in mind all the numbers you're looking at over the last couple of years since AEW started for everybody. All the numbers are 18% less people in the world. So judge against that curve, and I think that's an important thing people don't talk about very much. But it's also pretty cool that Dynamite in that time has held up so well and has actually had growth. And while the universe has declined 18% on cable, and I think a lot of that speaks to how a lot of the wrestlers that have been here from the beginning, whether it is Hangman Page in the last match of the card beating Kenny Omega, or whether it's MJF and Darby Allin in the first match, or everything in between. So the people that have been here from the beginning, and then the new stars that have come in that time, CM Punk and Eddie Kingston, Bryan Danielson and Miro, and so many great examples. You know, we've gotten so much stronger as a company. Britt Baker, probably since that company started, the single most improved wrestler in the world and the world champion wrestling, the #1 contender, Ty Conti, who to me is also one of the most improved wrestlers, and that had to be the best match she's ever wrestled tonight, in my opinion. So I do think, yeah. So anyway, to your point, yeah, it's all different.
Quick content and clarity on a follow-up. Does that include like Sling and YouTube TV, or does that offset some of the 18%?
No, the direct, you know, that would, as far as like linear subscribers to linear, that digital has gone up at that time.
Yeah.
But in terms of the cable satellite universe that we're talking those numbers, that's actually gone down 18% in that time.
Yeah.
Does AEW have anything comparable to a wellness policy or wellness testing? And if a full-time talent were to need help, does the company cover a portion or all of that?
Yeah, it certainly depends on the situation, but there have been times where we have covered that, and you know, certainly been there for people when they've needed time off. The most obviously visible situation and the most recent situation we would talk about is with Jon, and I think, you know, a lot of that is private between us. I mean, I would say, and I think he would be okay with us saying, that the company was very supportive of him taking the time off, even though it definitely affected my plans and it definitely affected the way the company was going. And I think we're very fortunate we have so many great wrestlers in the company that we had such a great show tonight, and you're missing one of the best wrestlers in the world, Jon Moxley, who's been one of the most important people in the company since day one. And that's a huge loss, and still we had a great show because there's so many great people here that all stepped up. And but to your point, yeah, it's we do, and I am very supportive of people taking that time off and try to help how I can.
Sorry, Tony, when Jay Lethal was out here earlier, he mentioned that he isn't going to be doing Final Battle, which I found striking, given he's been the cornerstone of the promotion for such a long time. That is sort of their send-off. Can you talk about how that decision came to be and what it might reflect about your feelings towards ROH?
He hasn't asked about doing. To me, I think he came in, he wanted to wrestle Sammy Guevara for the TNT title and focus on that match and on potentially winning the TNT title and being the TNT champion. So he never asked about wrestling Final Battle. So when you guys asked him about that, that was the first time anybody here's asked about that, because he never asked me about it and I never asked him. So if he wanted to do it, I'm not saying I necessarily would have said no, but it wasn't something he asked me about doing. I think he was ready to move on and try to win the TNT title.
Tony, any plans on coming to Canada in 2022? And if so, which city would like to run first?
I would love to come to Canada. There are a number of great cities all across Canada. There's so many great wrestling cities in Canada. It's a great country for wrestling, and I have so much respect for so many Canadian wrestlers from different cities. I'd like to go a number of places. I'm very biased towards Toronto because my father owns the Four Seasons Hotel in Toronto. Yeah, I've wanted to say something for a long time. I'm just going to say it. I have never brought this up, but I see people say stuff online, and me bringing this up will probably only make it worse, but I'm just going to say, my dad, bless you, my dad bought the Four Seasons Hotel in Toronto from a person who is a Saudi person 5 years ago, and that is the beginning and the end of it. It is very much an apples and oranges thing when you compare the ongoing business relationship that is going on with Saudi Arabia to what my dad did purchasing a property and moving on from a person, not the government. But I see people say it's like, oh, Shad Khan did that, Shad Khan. That's bullshit. And I've seen people say it for years, and if you're a wrestling fan and you see people say it, I would ask you to say that's not the case, because my dad is not involved in ongoing businesses, and he bought this hotel from a person years ago. Very different thing from what's going on in that part of the world. And for years I've wanted to mention this, and since I brought up Canada, I just thought it would be a relevant thing to say. I love Toronto, and the Four Seasons Hotel is one of the most beautiful hotels in the world, and my dad made a great investment there, and I love the city very much, and it's also one of the great wrestling cities. I went there on spring break in college. I drove up to see The Rock wrestle Hulk Hogan. And when Phil was sitting right here tonight, Mr. Punk was sitting here tonight, and talking about feeling it in the moment, like I felt something in the moment too, because I remembered being in Toronto and I was the only person cheering for The Rock. There were 70,000 people there. And my friend looked over at me like, what are you doing? And I looked at him and like, somebody has to. And that's how I felt about the Punk people tonight. They loved him so much, but there were way more Punk people tonight than there were Rock people in Toronto. Way more. And I was in both buildings. And so I know, I've seen what it's like when somebody makes that choice in the building, because Rock made a choice that I think everybody here knows the choice he made in the building that night and where he ended up. And he had no self-consciousness and he had no ego about it, and he did the right thing, and he made that a great match and did all the right things. And I think Mr. Punk did all the right things tonight to make this a great match tonight too. So I have a lot of great things to say about Toronto in particular, but there's a lot of great cities in Canada. So I didn't want to limit it to that one, but I thought I'd bring that up.
Tony, a bit of a similar question, but since travel's opened up a lot more, like I'm here for instance, any more headway on Craven Cottage show in the UK, especially with it looking like that we're going to be able to run a stadium show there next year?
Yeah, I would love to go to Craven Cottage, and the international travel, things are trending really great, and the way things are trending, I would say that there's a good chance. I love, things are going really great at Fulham right now. Which is the most important thing happening at Craven Cottage right now. We've won 6 straight matches and kept 5 straight clean sheets. And we have a lot of players out in the international break right now doing very well. So when it comes to Craven Cottage, my main focus is football, but one of my dreams is to take AEW there in the off season. Hopefully Fulham players will be celebrating a promotion and getting ready to come back and play in the Premier League, and I would love very much to bring AEW there too. So nothing would make me happier than to be in London with our players in the Premier League and with AEW in the Cottage.
Tony, I asked a little earlier about a relationship with Warner. Will you be doing more teaming up with them like you did in the beginning with DC Comics and things like that?
I would like to. Thank you, by the way, because I know you asked that question, and we had one, and thanks for waiting. So I really appreciate that. I would like to do more things like that with DC Comics, and I do think there's a good chance. We've got a number of synergies with Warner, and as the company grows and we bring in more stars and develop more young stars, both, they're having interest in both a lot of the young wrestlers and a lot of the big stars, and different properties and different things we can do both on TV. And I think there will be some things with DC happening, hopefully in with the comic books, I hope, but also I think hopefully with on-screen content. So a lot of good things happening there.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome. Thanks for holding that. Sorry, I'm glad you brought it up again.
Tony, is there anything about the crowd reactions tonight for the matches and the ebb and flow of the show that made you second guess any decision in terms of the order of the matches? And did any crowd reactions surprise you, good or bad tonight?
No, I mean, I was curious how Punk and Eddie was going to go, but it went pretty much like I expected. I knew there was going to be some Eddie cheers, and I think it was kind of a Rock Hogan situation, but I was really, like I said, it wasn't like it wasn't like the person cheering for CM Punk was me in Skydome. There were a lot of people cheering for CM Punk. It wasn't like the one person who felt like they had to support their guy. I was curious about that one, but no, I mean, nothing else really surprised me. The fans were into everything. I mean, let me ask you, did you think, I mean, you can be honest, I thought that I really liked the match order. I felt really strongly about it. Did you not like it?
No, I thought it worked.
Great, okay, good. No, then I'd be good. You scared me. I'm glad you liked it.
I thought it was a good show. I think we could have scrambled them and they still would have worked. I don't think to me it was not an obvious match order night because I didn't think there was an obvious number 2 match. It felt like there was an ensemble of matches that could have been featured at any time.
Yeah, I mean, Kenny and Hangman, I think Kenny versus Hangman, that's a great way to put it. Kenny versus Hangman, I think, is the one match that had to go at the end, and then everything else, you're totally right, you could have debated. I think it was wise to put some time between the Street Fight and False Count Anywhere, but also they were very different matches. They were very different kinds of matches, and I thought they were both really, really strong, but very different. And other than that, no, I really loved the way the card set up. I thought MJF and Darby had a perfect opener. Just really perfect. Symbolic too for 2 of the stars from the beginning before Dynamite even launched. When we were in startup company, these are people we'd earmarked to be stars of the future, and for them to do that, I thought was really special. It reminded me of when MJF and Jungle Boy tore the house down in an empty Daly's place for Double or Nothing 2020, which was really like a transitional pay-per-view. It was weird doing the shows in Daly's place because it was almost like pivoting to more like a territory for a while because the setup of the show was still like, I tried to keep the show in the ring and in the arena, but I mean, I tried to think of it more like a studio wrestling show in big space. And now being back in the arena and having the fans back, their reactions are so important. They made the show that much better, and I thought they were great tonight. So the reactions I thought were great top to bottom. So you scared me for a second. I thought it was something you didn't like. No, I'm glad. Okay, good. I feel better. Well, good. I loved it. I thought it was great.
Tony, can you give us an update about Jon Moxley? Have you spoken with him?
I have not. No, I'm talking to Renee. He's just mostly talking to Renee while he's in the treatment facility, but he's doing well. And Renee has said, I talk to Renee a few times a week, and she said he's doing better all the time. Feels better and sounds better, and that makes me so happy. And then while he's in there, we're doing the heavy lifting, plugging his book. So if anybody wants to buy John's book, it's the best wrestling book I've read. Brian Danielson and his friends have been doing some of the lifting. I was on the radio this week telling people that, and I mean it. He's a great person, and if you get to know him, and I think a lot of you have interviewed him, and you read the book, it's like talking to him. It's like he's just talking to you instead of reading a book. I'm excited for when he does the audiobook. It'll just be like John cutting the longest promo. He's doing well as talking to Renee a few days ago.
Tony, in terms of the fact we're 2 months away from really starting this new year, so 2022, what are some goals on the business side, on the creative side for you, for AEW as a whole, something that you would like to see accomplished, maybe by the end of next year?
Well, first of all, I'm really excited about establishing the TBS Championship. I'm really excited about it. The quarterfinals are coming up now, and we had a great match on the buy-in where we got to look at 2 of the quarterfinal matches with Jamie Hayter against Thunder Rosa and Hikaru Shida versus Nyla Rose. They're going to have a rematch of their great rivalry on Dynamite in the quarterfinals, and we have a lot more to look forward to. Also, Jade and Red Velvet we saw last night on Rampage is going to be a fiery match, and they're definitely both up for that. And also Ruby Soho versus Chris Statlander, which again, it's not like your traditional babyface heel match, but they're 2 great wrestlers, and the crowd's going to be up for both of them. They care about everything both of them do, and it could just be 2 great stars trading shots, and people love that too, as we've seen. So I'm really excited about that tournament, and Ruby Soho has wrestled all over, and I think I mentioned to you guys on the call a little bit, but she brought it up to me again today. This is, of all the tournaments she's been in, the most story and the most thought, and which is really cool because I take a lot of pride in story and thought, and the TBS Championship allows that much more story in the women's division, and we have the depth now where not only do we have a great world title match with Ty Conti against Britt Baker, the number one contender and the champion, but then also had 12 more great contenders to put a great tournament together, and now I think we're into the top 8, and I'm really excited about that, and I think it's a great move. It shows how much depth we've added since we began, but also it really fits with the move to TBS, so that's going to be really important. I'm very excited about establishing the new world champion, Hangman Page, but he's going to be up to the toughest test possible because I don't want people to think this is just a throwaway situation. The number one contender, Bryan Danielson, believe me, Hangman's going to have his work cut out for him, and I'm very excited for that. And again, the TNT title, we've got Jay Lethal. What a great free agent coming in. The Open Challenge allows us to have such fresh, exciting title matches, whereas the top 5 means wins and losses really matter, and a wrestler like Hangman Page or Ty Conti or FTR as a tag team have to work their way up and win matches and earn these title shots. And an Open Challenge is great too because it's very exciting. We've seen all these wrestlers come in the Forbidden Door. Eddie Kingston, Ricky Starks, Bobby Fish, and Jay Lethal is a great wrestler, and I'm really excited to see what happens here. And with him walking through the Forbidden Door, we've seen a lot of stars made walking in challenging for the TNT title, and it'd be cool to see a new champion.
Thank you.
Just a few more questions, please. Tony, are you looking forward to updating the presentation of AEW as a whole? For example, shooting in 4K, an over-the-top streaming service, something like that?
Well, these are great questions, and some of these things I need input from my media partners, and we work with Warner Media, and I think the more growth we have and the more people and the more demand we have for it, streaming service is something we definitely talked about, and I think there's a lot of options, and one thing that's great for us is we keep growing the library. Every week there's another 2 hours of Dynamite, there's an hour of Rampage, we're always filming Dark, Elevation, Road 2, the Countdown show for this pay-per-view, and all the pay-per-views have been excellent, and so important, our pay-per-view library. You know, we've done all these great shows, and this was our 3rd installment of Full Gear. We've had 3 All Outs, 3 Double or Nothings, and 2 Revolutions. So in our 11 great pay-per-views, plus the original Fight for the Fallen and Fighter Fest, which aren't in the TV library, and we have other great things in the library that nobody's ever seen, like the House Always Wins show we did in Jacksonville last spring, which was like a lot of fans walked out and they said that was a pay-per-view. You did a pay-per-view, and kept it under wraps. And I told the fans that night, this is like when I was a kid. You're all going to like it's like the ECW arena, and it's not going to be on VHS tape like the tapes I used to trade for. But you would go to the show and nobody would see it for a long time, and then eventually it would come out on tape and all the hardcore fans would see it, but only the people that were in the arena would see it for a while. I think that's what it will be with The House Always Wins. And then also I put a lot of thought into the Jericho Cruise matches this year. Somebody had a question about this on Twitter. I forgot to answer them, so hopefully this will answer their question. The Jericho matches this year, I put a lot of thought into booking the Jericho Cruise matches so they are canon. So all the Jericho Cruise matches this year are in the win, it's intentional, they're all in the win-loss records, and those shows we taped, so they're in the tape library also, and there's a lot of great wrestling this year on the Jericho Cruise that when we get a service someday where people can watch the streaming videos, that'll have a couple cool videos they've never seen before.
How is Lance Archer doing?
He's here. Thanks for asking. Yeah, he's good. He is good, and thankfully, he came out of it good. It was a neck injury, not a head injury, so he cleared all the impact testing, concussion, all the stuff, and over the last several weeks, they've determined he twisted his neck, I think, but he's good.
Timetable on return?
I'm not exactly sure. I don't want to really rush it. We have so many great stars, and Lance is a really important wrestler for us, and he's done so many great things this year, like winning the IWGP US title in the Texas Death Match in his home state over Jon Moxley. It was a great match, and he also had a great match in New Japan with Tanahashi. I'm a little surprised, speaking of New Japan, you guys haven't really asked me about New Japan yet, but I'm kind of betting now one of you might. But now, Lance has done so many great things. So no, I don't have an exact date, but I don't see any point rushing it really, because with the neck injury, you don't want to rush it. So, but he's been here today and recently with docs checking up on him, and he's doing great. He's in great spirits, and he's had a great 2021.
Are you allowed to tell us any more about the Owen now? The Full Gear has happened? The Owen Cup?
I would like to say a little bit more about the Owen. I feel like it would serve me well as a promoter to push it to TV because I want to give it maximum coverage when most people see it. But it may not be the format everybody expects, but I'm really excited for people to learn more about the Owen.
final question?
Is there anybody who hasn't gotten any yet? All right, you have not at all. And if there's anybody else, I don't want to make sure I answered everybody's questions, so please.
Okay, so this is kind of backtracking a bit, but earlier you were talking about how Tay Conti had like her best match that you have seen. Clearly the fans are behind her as well. She had a great reaction tonight. What can we expect to see from her in the future?
Well, I think she's somebody who would be in line. She's got a great win-loss record. She's gonna, I can tell you, is the person who decides on the top 5, going through the stats and the records every week. She's definitely gonna continue being in the top 5. And she could definitely work her way up and get another shot. Look at Britt. There's something Britt said about her that I think is really apt, which is she said she reminds me so much of me a year or 2 ago, where she's got so much potential and she keeps getting better and better and the people believe in her more and more, but she never wins the big match. And that was Britt. And honestly, it was Sammy too. And it was Jungle Boy for a long time too. And there's a pattern there. And it was Darby for a long time. And then they started winning the big match, and then now all of a sudden they've been in a lot of the biggest matches and gotten on bigger and bigger stages. So I think as she keeps getting better and better, the stages will stay big, because tonight was about the biggest stage you can get on. But I think she's going to keep growing into the stage, and I really believe in Tay Conti. She's really important wrestler for the future. Thank you for asking that. Okay, so is there anybody who didn't get to ask anything or any last questions before I don't want to leave anybody without answering?
Certainly ask you about New Japan. Okay. Very excited about anything you can do with them. But logistically, obviously, it's a challenge. So are you working with Gato? Are you talking with anybody about when is the right time to move somebody and to shuffle them?
Yeah, we are in communication, and I often work through intermediaries. Rocky Romero is a good intermediary between us, but we're communicating, and Gato has been very forthcoming. I'm grateful to Gato for working with us, and also I think we've tried to be a good partner to them. I'm very excited about Ishii coming in to AEW. He's one of my personal favorite wrestlers from outside the company. I thought his match with Jon Moxley in 2019 was my favorite non-AEW match of the year. That match they had in New Japan was excellent in the G1. And I think that's such a great choice by Orange Cassidy. When I came out at the end of last night, I think I wanted people to know that there might be more to this, and that there could be potential for another chapter in this when things ended the way they did. And it ended up being such a nice moment with Orange bringing in little OC into the ring, which was a nice moment, but also good to foreshadow that Orange Cassidy, being a member of Chaos, has other benefits. He can bring in such a great mystery partner like Ishii, and we're very fortunate he was in the country and wanted to come wrestle the Butcher and the Blade. And then speaking of the Butcher and the Blade was everywhere with the brass knuckles, knocking people out, getting the heat last night. And the Butcher has been out on tour with Every Time I Die, and they've had one of the most successful albums in the world. And Andy's a very well-liked person, to be honest with you, in AEW, and the Butcher and the Blade are one of the most successful tag teams we've had. If you look at their win-loss record, they have one of the best win-loss records in the company. So it's a big deal to get the Butcher and the Blade back for us, also to wrestle Ishii and Orange. And when I talked to him and asked him if he would come back and wrestle the match, he said he'd be honored, and he's leaving his tour and coming back, and he's going to try and get back without missing any days, because he had scheduled this Wednesday off just in case we got something big. And it is one of the Butcher's dreams to wrestle Ishii, so it's a very cool match, and that's another exciting element to it. I really want to make sure everyone gets their money's worth on the travel, so please, any last questions?
I'm a Minneapolis person, so I didn't have to travel, but first off, thanks for coming here.
Thank you.
Second, Minneapolis question, what's been your favorite things about the city and Minnesota in general? Well,
I'll tell you a story about life, a couple things, before I came here. The best experience I had and the worst experience I ever had here were right in the hotel I'm staying in here. So in Minneapolis, I've had great experiences in this area. We were in the AFC Championship game, and we came really close. The Jaguars in 2017, early 2018 playoffs, to go into the Super Bowl in February 2018, and the game was here. And I still have my notes from the Eagles-Patriots Super Bowl. I took very intricate notes.
I'm sorry about it being 30 below. Buddy.
No, it was it was great. It was very cold outside, but it was great in the stadium with the roof closed. And I have a lot of memories of being here, but it was really hard because the Jaguars had a very good chance to be in the game and had the call gone our way when Miles Jack wasn't down and ran it back, then we would have been in the game, I think. And so that was really hard going through that, but to sit down and strap down and take notes through the game, and that was surreal to be here for that. But then later that year I came back. One of my really good friends is Daniel Adler, the assistant GM of the Minnesota Twins, and he used to work under me. And he's been up for GM jobs in baseball, and he works here in Minneapolis, and he was backstage with friends. And I went to his wedding in August of 2018, and I was right across the street here again, not long later, in the same place. And I was with him and his family, and they are all Harvard educated, brilliant people. And I was telling them about my idea about just over 3 years ago for AEW. And they thought I was crazy. They thought I was crazy. They looked at me like I was gonna flush a bunch of money down the toilet, and they would be the first now to admit it, just like my dad. So it is very gratifying to come back to Minneapolis and have Daniel backstage with the folks from the Twins, and to have him remind me of that 3 years ago was very cool. And then I went to the Mall of America and watched Tiger Woods and Brooke Koepka, and I called Chris Jericho on the phone and talked to him about coming into AEW that same day in August. And so I have a lot of great memories of Minneapolis. And it's also one of the great wrestling cities, and I thought for Baron Von Raschke, for me as a wrestling fan, and for Chris Jericho as somebody who just loves wrestling deep down so much, and Chris is a huge AWA fan too, it was a great moment. And that was Chris's idea, and it was such a cool idea. So when he brought it up in the spirit of tonight, paying homage to so many great legends, including the late great Eddie Guerrero, it just felt right, tonight. So I have a lot of great memories of this city. And I was glad we're here. I'd love to come back, and when we had the opportunity to come to the Target Center, it was a great opportunity for us, and I'm very, very glad the city supported us so great with the show tonight. Anything else?
Is there something that you look for in a city when you're planning tours? And selfishly, when are you coming back to Washington, D.C.? It's been 2 years we've missed you.
We're gonna come back to Washington, D.C. We're coming back, not long. You're gonna find out soon. We're gonna come back. I can't wait to come back to D.C. That's where we had the first ever Wednesday Night Dynamite, and I'm excited to come back to D.C. And when we're going through, Raphael and I are looking, and we're trying to run a cost-effective tour, but also most importantly, hit great cities where we're gonna service the fans, where we have a great chance to do a really strong house. It's great to be back on the road. A lot of the shows we've done, honestly, since we went back on the road in July, are the shows we had scheduled before the pandemic. I think I said this on the media call, so I apologize for duplicating, but April of 2020 was supposed to be St. Louis, Milwaukee, Boston, Philly, Houston. Those are all shows we've done in the past several weeks, in the last 2 months we've done all those. So we're still making up shows from before the pandemic, so that we had a great calendar, and we're still kind of working through it, and now we're adding dates back in. DC is a great example of a city we're going to go to a second time, and there's a lot of great cities we've never been to that we're really excited to go to. So a lot of factors go into it, but most importantly, I think it's servicing the fans while also running cost effective and not going, cross country every few days and running the crew ragged and unnecessarily spending money. It feels like I've gotten up to almost everyone in here, but if there's any, speak now or forever hold your peace, guys. All right, great. Well, I really appreciate it. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
This is great. Thank you, guys. I hope to see you all again at Revolution. There's a little bit of a gap before Revolution, so hopefully I'll see some of you between now and then for individual stuff, but it always really means a lot when you come to the pay-per-view, and when you stay this late, it's even cooler, so thank you. Thank you.
Tell us where we should be booking our trip for?
It'll be a short trip for some of you.